reaction to this article?
He's being honest about, I mean, everybody feels that way. Just about every person feels that way. I think Michael Jordan had a quote once that I want to win, but I want to be the reason we win. Like, and players feel that.
I think that's easier in basketball to accept than football because
certainly
you can
than a receiver. Yeah, absolutely. But this article, I read it all.
Talks a lot about Jesus, bro.
Yeah, which I love that with AJ. But it did give me a different perspective on him. I'm not saying what he's doing is right with all these, social media posts and stuff. But, it painted him as a tremendously hard worker who is obsessed with, being great, being awesome. And I do understand where if that's how you are and you have that talent, if you're not getting the football, you can get frustrated, Now, again, I don't think it's not right. I would say, look, you got to go talk with Jalen privately. You got to talk with the OC or Sirianni, whoever privately. It's not right to say it publicly because it just creates a distraction. And even to the point of last week, them scoring 38 points without him. Now it's like, oh, do they need it creates negative things all the way around, even for him. So I'm not saying what he's doing is right. I understand it, though, and I just think he has to learn how to control it and be like, look, it's not good for your team. And it's actually not good for his image either.
Yeah, the comments that he had were thoughtful, and in reading them, they make a lot of sense. And you appreciate someone who wants to be great and who wants to be a great contributor. But if the main goal is to win, then you constantly bring up your unhappiness doesn't contribute to the main goal. And so you did it last year in the playoffs, and then you did it after they won the Super Bowl, and then you did it at the beginning of this year, and now you're trying to explain yourself, and you're doing it all over again. So all you're doing, are you trying to litigate this in the court of public opinion to put pressure on the head coach, the offensive coordinator, to put pressure on the quarterback? Do you think that helps your relationship with Jalen Hurts? Maybe you don't care. Maybe those two guys don't get along. I would imagine those two guys don't get along.
At one point, I mean, one of them is the godparent of the other one's kid.
Yeah.
So I forget which is which. I apologize. I don't know if it's AJ's kid or Jalen's kid. But and Brandon Graham said to us last year, those guys used to be really close. I don't know what's happened. So it does seem like that relationship went. And in this article, AJ says, I don't have friends. Like the closest thing to a friend, it was sad.
Well, he said he really demands a lot of
right. And he was like, but he also said I feel like it would be asking too much of my friend, someone to be my friend. And so he does seem to have a lot of, his own stuff that he's dealing with that he was open and vulnerable about. But to your point, clearly the relationship with Jalen Hurts is not what it once was. I'll let you finish, but I just...
Yeah, and I can't imagine it's going to get better. And I would imagine he's asked for a trade. I would imagine they're thinking...
You think he's asked for a trade?
Yeah, I bet you he's asked for a trade multiple times.
Wow.
Because you can't go this public this many times over this long a period of time and have not gone to see the owner or the GM and say, hey, I want to do something different. He's expressed over and over what he wants to do, and he's not going to really be able to do that in this structure, and so his only option is to go somewhere else. Now, they may not pull the trigger on that, but I would imagine if he's willing to be this public about his displeasure, then he's definitely gone to his higher-ups and said, I want out.
All right, not the demanding a trade part, which I'll get to in a moment, but you and I made the same joke.
What?
I wrote, honestly, he reminds me of Wilds. His arrival marked the team's ascent to real notoriety, but he's just a lot to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
You want to contribute?
No, I'm just and in all seriousness, I respect his honesty, but I think the most optimistic view of it is this is his last year in Philly. Like that, and it is...
They talked about how Sirianni seems to love him.
Might love him, but Sirianni, this has been, in my opinion, a failure might be too strong, a shortcoming of Sirianni not being able to get his arms around this. that this has not been something he was able to find a way to communicate exactly what coach just communicated to his star player who he loves in a way that he'll understand.
And does he love him? What other alternatives does he have besides saying, I love the guy? What else?
Well, it's got to
what else
be
can he
frustrating to hear him saying what he's saying publicly.
And again, you guys remember last year when I said, and I think you gave me a hard time for it, I really empathized with what AJ was saying in the locker room, because it did feel to me like it was coming from a selfish place of I want the ball, but I really believed him that he thought, but getting me the ball helps the team so much that it was self and team focused, if you will. Reading this article only made me more fervent in that belief that he really believes I am being a good teammate in doing this. I don't, again, you can believe something and it's not true, but I do think he really thinks, his heart's in the right places, I guess the cliche way to put it, but it is so much, and he is so consistently the epicenter, the eye of whatever storm is around the Eagles.
All of them start with him.
And it feels so unnecessary. And the other thing this article, to me, reconfirmed is he's not going to move off how he feels.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about this as slow and as nuanced as we can. And let's talk about this from every aspect. Forewarning, as I told you guys before, I am way tired. I was at the hospital with my father, 6 a.m. It's been a long day. Everything's been going great. So, no complaints there. But, I wish I could be doing this when I was a little bit more on my A game. So, that's just my warning going into this. But I really do want to talk about this, because this is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. And it's something that I think that I can speak pretty strongly with, from not only a psychological level, a well-being level, just because of my own experience from playing. Any way we can kind of dice this up, listen, I don't think I'm always the best. I'm not the best person to talk about, should we run here or should we throw? What's the best game plan? I don't know. I'm not Sean McVay. I'm not Andy Reid. But once we start talking about some of this type of stuff, it's this is my true expertise and background. So let's just start from the very beginning, okay? With AJ Brown saying I want to win, that's the main goal, but I also want to help. I want to do my thing as well. That is absolutely true. Every athlete feels that way. Every player wants to be the reason why you win. Everyone dreams of making the game-winning shot, the strikeout on the plate, on the mound. Game 7 of the World Series, the home run to win the game, the touchdown pass, whatever sport you're talking about, that's what you're dreaming of. You're not dreaming of just being there and supporting everyone else. That's not what you're thinking. And it is something that you kind of, depending on what level you play at and how great you are. And this is where, again, I obviously I never played in the NFL, but I played at enough various levels where I was the best player on the team and the worst player on the team. And the truth is that the higher and higher level that I got, the more and more competitive that I got, it was harder for me to be the best player, because when you are the best player, that's how you keep getting to that next level. The circle, as my one coach showed, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Less and less people are in that circle to be able to get to that next level. And so I know what it's like to be the leader of the team. I know what it's like to be the person that's kind of carrying a team. And I know what it's like to be hanging on by a thread. And I know what it's like to be on a team where I believe that I'm great and that I will put this team in a position to succeed, but I'm not being put in that position, or I've been benched, or whatever it may be. And a part of you is you're frustrated, you're annoyed, you're a part of you is rooting for your team to lose. That's a real experience that I had, where I'm sitting there and I'm like, I hope we lose. I want to lose. Now, granted, I'm not trying to win a World Series or a Super Bowl or an NBA title, so it's a little bit different at some of those levels. But because you want to prove that you're right, And I guarantee you, a part of AJ Brown wants to lose. I promise you, because he wants to be like, I told y'all I'm right. And it is a tricky thing that you kind of have to navigate. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. What I'm ultimately saying is that it's human. And I don't know if I do know that AJ Brown is not going about all of this the right way. Even this article, even all this type of stuff, I appreciate the honesty. I appreciate the vulnerability and him talking about friends and stuff. I don't got a lot of friends, man. Like, I think I'm difficult a lot and put a lot on people. I go through phases of my life where I'm like, I remember watching Ozark, and which is a great show, by the way. And the one mom, the wife, whatever, whoever she is, the main woman, the mother in slash wife in that show, she's got like a pretty emotional moment where she's crying, and she's like crying to Jason Bateman, her husband, and she's like, why am I so difficult to love? And I was like, oh man, like that's how I can feel sometimes too. And it's like how AJ Brown clearly feels as well. So he's a deep thinker. He's got a lot on his mind, and I appreciate that. Again, I'm cut from that same cloth, and so I get it. But it is tricky, because part of being part of a team is understanding that your role can change, that sometimes you are a huge part of it, and sometimes you do need to be the supporter. For even teams where maybe I wasn't the best, but I wasn't the worst, but I was still a major contributor, sometimes it was my moment to shine, and other times it was my role to just support, or just to just be on the bench, for instance, right? Like whatever the moment needed from you. But someone like an AJ Brown, like, this is why, someone like my experience is going to be fundamentally different, not only because AJ Brown obviously has reached significantly higher levels than me, but because he's always been the best. He's always been the greatest. He's always been the reason. And so he knows nothing else but that. And that is something that you do, you do lack. It is why, and I talk about this a lot, it's why it is really valuable to listen to the Orlovskis of the world, some of these other players who were not mega superstars. I'm convinced that when it's all said and done, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, like, I don't know if their views are going to be maybe as sharp as, say, Orlovsky, or there's other names that haven't reached those as high as levels, Romo or whatever, because those guys had to do different stuff. They had different experiences. They had more grounded, more experiences that were more 360 degrees, where Patrick Mahomes' experience is, I'm a superstar. Like, I am a literal god. I think part of it is why a lot of people kind of struggle with what Tom Brady has to share. Because whatever Tom Brady says, like, and again, Tom Brady's a genius. Tom Brady knows more football than any of us. And yet there is something that when he talks, you're just kind of like, I don't know. Like, it's just, I don't know. It feels tricky in a lot of ways. I hear Greg Olsen talk, and I'm like, okay. And Troy Aikman, and granted, Troy Aikman also had a ton of success, but obviously that was a huge team success. And that's always been that story about that. It was never just Troy Aikman carrying the I almost said the Broncos, the Cowboys, where it has been pretty much Tom, and understandably so. And so, I just think that AJ Brown is going to have such a narrow and specific view of what it takes and what he needs. And, listen, when so many people are kind of like, hey, look how stacked this Philadelphia Eagles offense is, look how amazing it is in that system, I understand why AJ Brown feels that he should feast. And I get it. But the reality is that, and I don't have this all in front of me right now, but when I did these deep dives and people said that Jalen Hurts isn't a good enough passer, or this or that, or that, AJ Brown doesn't get the ball enough, like, I went through those numbers and showed you that, like, consistently, AJ Brown and Devontae consistently are top in the NFL in passing, in receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, targets, like catches, like all the stats. All the stats, they are consistently top 10. And, if they're off by a little bit, it's like, oh, if AJ Brown had another 100 yards, he skyrockets to the second in the NFL. Oh, and if he catches just one more touchdown, or, whatever it is, he now skyrockets to top 3, receiving touchdowns. So it's just like, what are we saying, right? That someone like AJ year after year has to have 2,000 receiving yards, 20 receiving touchdowns. Like, it's just too much. It's just too much. And even last season, AJ Brown, if he wasn't injured, when you do the math, he was on pace for all of that. And same thing with Devontae. And so when you talk about, like, I want to win, that's the main goal. But I want to help. I want to do my thing as well. Like, I get that. I really do. but also, then this is what I had said before in previous clips, conversations around this. Show me the winning and the Super Bowls that Jamar Chase is getting to and has. Show me Justin Jefferson. I mean, like, show me Tyreek Hill now. Tyreek Hill went to Miami. His numbers were higher. Obviously, he's injured. Now he's getting older and whatnot. But higher with Tua Tagovailoa than with Mahomes. Like, that's what I always laugh at. I always use that as an example to be like, you tell me that it's all Mahomes, but then, like, Tyreek Hill goes to Tua and yet puts up even better numbers than he did with Mahomes. He hasn't sniffed the playoffs. I mean, he hasn't sniffed a Super Bowl. Not even close. Not even close. So, like, those things do matter. They matter. And with the Eagles, A.J. Brown has gotten to 2 Super Bowls. 2 Super Bowls. And he won one. And he caught a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl, right? I think he has to have multiple touchdown passes at this point in multiple Super Bowls. Jamar Chase can't say that. Justin Jefferson can't say that. Randy Moss can't say that. Like, there's very few players on a roster that consistently feast and dominate, outside of quarterback, of course, that now also win all the time too. It's what makes kind of like a Gronk or a Travis Kelce very unique, and they both were obviously attached to all-time great quarterbacks and all-time great teams that were run, perfectly 360 degrees for extended periods of time here. And so you're just not always going to, I mean, how many other times do you really see that? And so, yeah, it's tough. It's tricky. And I get why he's frustrated. I get what he wants. And I think in a lot of ways, oh man, this is so tricky because football changes so much fundamentally in any given moment. The way how you play one game is going to change dramatically, right? Listen, the Kansas City Chiefs were I think were a way better team than the Los Angeles Rams. And yet that game was close. We could say the weather or whatnot, but yet the Eagles obviously dominated the Chiefs, dominated the Commanders in a way that they did not do against the Rams. Again, for whatever reasons why, it doesn't matter. It's just not how it actually unfolded. Same thing with the Packers. The Packers game was close-ish. At the end, it kind of broke open a little bit, but like there was still a moment throughout that game where you're just like, the Packers, if the Packers didn't, hurt themselves a couple times, you're just like, this game could have gone another way. And again, I always criticize people who ever tried to pretend that wasn't the Eagles' Super Bowl to win. But I'm just saying, like, they beat the Chiefs and the Commanders in a way that was so dominant, so over the top, and that's clearly how great the Eagles were, but it's not like they did that every single game, whether it be in the playoffs or even the regular season. They played the Commanders before, and they didn't beat them in that way, right? So, like, that's all I'm trying to emphasize and get at. So things change so much, moment to moment, game to game, week to week, drive to drive, season to season. And so on one way, you do want to see A.J. Brown get involved more, but as I kind of said before, he does actually get involved a tremendous amount. He does. He absolutely does. And so it's just like, yeah, it's a weird situation. To now put this on Sirianni. Sirianni is the one coach that can't put his arms around a wide receiver who wants the ball. I mean, are we serious right now? That's what we're going to put that on Sirianni? How about the fact that he was able to keep everything together and get to multiple Super Bowls and win a Super Bowl? How about that? Like, what are we saying? You know what? I think it's actually really disappointing that Andy Reid couldn't keep Rashee Rice from getting in a high-speed car crash and hit and run, fleeing the scene, and keep him out of jail. I just think it's bad that Andy Reid couldn't do that. I mean, it's just, he should have been able to put his arms around Rashee Rice, who was clearly having some struggles. I blame Andy Reid. I blame Tom Brady for not being able to keep AB. Listen, if AB doesn't start taking his jersey off and going nuts and doing everything that he's doing, that team could still have potentially contended for another Super Bowl. Certainly be better with AB than without. I think it's bad that Tom Brady could not put his arms around him in a way that kind of lowered the temperature. Like what are we doing with that conversation now? It's all absurd. It's all absurd. So it's just dumb. I mean, it's just doesn't make any sense. Zero, none. So yeah, this conversation is a lot more nuanced than I think people want to accept. I do get all the various arguments, all the various sides. I didn't, because it was actually when I was in the hospital room with my dad. After things were good and he was in the recovery room and turned on the TV trying to look for stuff, and I came across Colin's interview with oh my gosh, what's his name, Mark Schlereth, and ironically it was that segment, and I was like, oh, I'll linger on this for a second, and I saw the conversation. Mark is very cut from the cloth of just like, it's all about the team, it's all about winning, that's all that matters, and I appreciate that, and you need the bulk of your team like that, no question about it. But I do promise you that there are plenty of players, important players, that are not like that. And so it is something that you do have to accept to a degree. And you do wish you could make it work in a way that everyone kind of just puts their arms around each other. And it's not always that straightforward. And it's, unfortunate that this is the way it is right now. And hopefully it actually ends up being a net positive. Hopefully it does encourage the growth of this Eagles team, and it encourages the growth of AJ and Jalen and Saquon and Devontae and et cetera. But this is the benefit that you get, that when you win a Super Bowl, the Eagles are in the position of power right now, and that is always the best position to be in when you're dealing with players in this situation. Because if they didn't win the Super Bowl, they lost the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, like AJ Brown would have so much more behind him, so much more support. But like, whether it be publicly or whether it be within that locker room, and so I still am a firm believer that so much of this does come down to coaching, and it's just, listen, man. And unless you go to a place where you have an offensive head coach who's just calling the plays and he's going to be there for the long haul, if you keep winning like you do with the Eagles, you're unfortunately going to have some new coaches, and that's the burden of winning, and the huge benefit that Andy Reid, McVay, et cetera, offer their teams, and Stafford and Mahomes and company. They get that benefit. But yet, it's still not always what it seems in some of these situations. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how people feel about this constant conversation, because it is constant, and I do think it's fair that Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown do not get along anymore, and they were close, and relationships change, dynamics change. I think Jalen Hurts probably often comes from I'll end here. I think Jalen Hurts, based off of my observations of how he talks, how he interacts with other people, he definitely comes from more of a place of like, I'm the mature one, I'm the grounded one. He kind of takes on a more like fatherly role, big brother role, like definitely like even his really awesome moment with Devontae after, during the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was ending, but it was still, I think, technically like on the field. But they were all down the sidelines. And Devontae is so overwhelmed. Like he's so emotional. And Jalen's just like, kind of holding him and just being like, like kind of like we did it. And he was holding space for him. I don't love that saying, but it's all I could think of right now. He was holding space for him, and he's like, we'll catch up, because I think, because he's like, it's been a minute. And I think what he really was saying was kind of like, yeah, man, I know we haven't been able to be as close as we had been in seasons past. And I know even this season things got a little weird. And I think that's why Devontae was also so overwhelmed of just like, man, I think you can always believe you can achieve something, but even the greatest players are still going to have some doubt. If you think Mahomes never has doubt, or Jalen Hurts has never had doubt, Devontae never, I mean, like, they all have it to a degree and levels. And I'm sure like in that moment, it was just this overwhelming emotion of like, we did it. And I'm kind of like, in a way, like, I'm kind of sorry that things got a little weird, that we got a little distant, that things got, things unfolded just not just holding hands and skipping off to the sunset. I think honestly that was my read on that moment. And Jalen Hurts is just still taking it from like I'm the man here. And I don't mean like, oh, I'm the man, I'm king, but just like I'm the mature man, I'm the grown man, I'm the father here. Right. And it's like if someone who's ever had a little kid, whether it's like your niece, nephew, your child, whatever, if you ever, once they get old enough where you can start to have like real conversations with them and they can annoy you or they need to apologize to you for whatever, it's just like you're just kind of like, yeah, no, and you could take different ways where like, yeah, that was wrong of you to do that, right? You understand that you shouldn't throw a fit because you didn't get your ice cream, or you take the approach where you're just like, it's all right, no, listen, I get it, you're a little upset, it's all good, like you can take different approaches. And in that moment, Jalen Hurts is just taking it's all good, man. I love you, and it's all good. And I think sometimes people can really connect to that, and sometimes people don't connect to that. It's very much kind of like we don't feel equals in that moment, actually. We don't feel like two people going through it together. It feels like you're on the outside witnessing it rather than being in it with us. And it's different experiences. It's different experiences. So, and I can put off that energy sometimes, the Jalen Hurts energy, but I also certainly have the Devontae and AJ Brown energy. That's why I was saying, like, I think I'm pretty well fit for this because I go in and out of all these phases. So that's why to me, it's very clear to me. It's very clear to me. This whole conversation gonna bring up some wounds right now. Okay. Like I'm feeling a little triggered. I'm gonna have to, I don't know. Eat some chocolate and get a lay in bed, I don't know, but those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about AJ Brown, Philadelphia Eagles, the dynamic with Jalen Hurts, what this team needs, what puts them in the best possible position to succeed? How do you make sense of this conversation as a whole? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.